The Relatives Came by Cynthia Rylant. Do you know what relatives are? Relatives are people who are in your family. It looks like this is a story about some people who are coming to visit. Because sometimes you have people who are in your family who don't live in your home, and they get to come visit you. Look at all these suitcases. I bet they need those so they have all their clothes for their visit, huh? It was in the summer of the year when the relatives came. They came up from Virginia. They left when their grapes were nearly purple enough to pick, but not quite. They had an old station wagon that smelled like a real car, and in it they put an ice chest full of soda pop and some boxes of crackers and some bologna sandwiches, and up they came from Virginia. They left at 4 in the morning when it was still dark, before even the birds were awake. They drove all day long and into the night, and while they traveled along, they looked at the strange houses and different mountains, and they thought about their almost purple grapes back home. They thought about Virginia, but they thought about us too, waiting for them. Do you have anybody who you'd like to visit, or you'd like to have them come to visit you? So they drank up all their pop and ate up all their crackers and traveled up all those miles until finally they pulled into our yard. Then it was hugging time. Talk about hugging. Those relatives just passed us all around their car, pulling us against their wrinkled Virginia clothes, crying sometimes. They hugged us for hours. Do you get lots of hugs when you see your relatives? I do. I give lots of hugs too. Then it was into the house, and so much laughing and shining faces and hugging in the doorways. You'd have to go through at least 4 different hugs to get from the kitchen to the front room. Those relatives. And finally, after a big supper 2 or 3 times around until we all got a turn at the table, there was quiet talk, and we were in 2s and 3s through the house. That reminds me of when my relatives come and we eat together and we talk together. And it reminds me that today I miss my relatives because they haven't come to my home for a long time. And I miss their hugs and I miss eating with them. So it makes me feel a little bit sad that I miss them, but it makes me feel happy that I get to talk to them other ways, and that I know that the time will come when we'll get to see each other like this again. The relatives weren't particular about beds, which was good since there weren't any extras. So a few squeezed in with us and the rest slept on the floor. Some with their arms thrown over the closest person, or some with an arm across one person and a leg across another. It was different going to sleep with all that new breathing in the house. Hear that? Even the dog is finding a place to sleep, right? That's a lot of people squeezed in together. Sometimes you do that when the relatives come, huh? And you all share space. The relatives stayed for weeks and weeks. They helped us tend the garden, and they fixed any broken things they could find. Those relatives are helping with a lot of stuff, aren't they? They ate up all our strawberries and melons, then promised we could eat up all their grapes and peaches when we came to Virginia. Oh, look at that. They're playing music together. Do you ever play music with your relatives? But none of us thought about Virginia much. We were so busy hugging and eating and breathing together. That's a lot of happy times, isn't it? Lots of kids and grown-ups smiling and laughing. Finally, after a long time, the relatives loaded up their ice chest and headed back to Virginia at 4 in the morning. We stood there in our pajamas and waved them off in the dark. We watched the relatives disappear down the road. Then we crawled back into our beds that felt too big and quiet, and we fell asleep. And the relatives drove on all day and into the night. And while they traveled along, they looked at the strange houses and different mountains, and they thought about their dark purple grapes waiting at home in Virginia. But they thought about us too, missing them. And they missed us. People who love each other miss each other, don't they? And when they were finally home in Virginia, they crawled into their silent, soft beds and dreamed about the next summer. I love it when my relatives come visit. I love it when I get to go visit my relatives. I miss them when I don't get to see them, but I'm happy knowing that I'll get to see them again.